This is in his column. I'm just going to read what he said about Meghan. At night, I'm unable to sleep as I lie there, grinding my teeth and dreaming of the day when she, Meghan, is made to parade naked through the streets of every town in Britain while the crowds chant shame and throw lumps of excrement at her. Now, he had a lot of public backlash for that, and he apologized, and they took the thing down. But what type of idiot writes something like this about a person, a girl, who lives in the world, who's trying to wake up in the morning and get through the day?
I don't think we can ignore the racial component.
What a disgusting
I don't think we can ignore the racism and the bigotry that she faced.
And classism,
and classism, but I think it had much more to do with race. And the royal family made all of its money on the backs of black and brown people, stole a lot of that wealth, had slaves, participated in the slave trade. Well, that's why this was such a missed opportunity. They should have embraced her and brought their country closer together instead of pushing her away and playing on their bigotry.
It remains a powerful tradition.
You're right, because look,
they're like Kevin McCarthy. They just want power.
We've seen.
Jeremy did tweet that he was, quote, horrified to have caused so much hurt and vowed to be more careful in the future. But here's the thing, you guys. He's a really big host in the UK. He hosts Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. He also has 2 other shows on Amazon Prime.
And he hosted Top Gear, which is probably the most popular show in the history of UK. Absolutely.
What the heck was he thinking by saying that? And how does he still have his job? Or am I
jobs?
Jobs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shows the power that certain people have, and also the consumerism of degrading women, and also the violence against women. Because Camilla, the Queen Consort or whatever, just had lunch with this person, and there seems to be a sign-off by these words being published in the Sun that this is okay. And I believe Camilla has an initiative about protecting women or the endangerment of women, and this seems like something volatile enough to constitute the endangerment of a woman who, BT dubs, what has Meghan Markle done?
I know.
Like, honestly, what has she done other than exist and marry a man that you don't feel that she's deserving of? Because at the root of all of this, that's what it's giving.
I think we all know what Prince Andrew's done.
Right.
I wonder if there's an article about him.
Right.
I'm very curious.
I also have to say, like what Erica said, when you hate someone on us, I get that he's a provocateur. I know who he is. People are like, oh, he says stuff like this all the time.
But he doesn't write op-eds.
Right, and when he says this about someone who already has that much vitriol, when you hate someone on a cellular level, even if you're joking, again, where was there the fight between these 2 people? What did she ever do? So what Erica is saying really truly is and you said it before, they're proving her point. She does nothing, and they eat her alive, throwing excrement at her as she walks.
I didn't read that part.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
But it's important. It's so dirty and vile and violent. And you can say I'm overreacting, but I think it's reckless for someone who is a target like that.
I have the same visceral reaction.
He did this because he had permission.
Yes.
You don't write an article about this. You don't write anything about
it's in the Sun.
The royalty without permission. You don't do this. This is the boss letting you know that you can take a shot. They start talking about organizations like this. Nothing happens, nothing is written, nothing is said without permission. So he had permission to write this.
He just left Camilla's
and here we go. There's no way that there's an article that would ever be written about anybody like this without expressed permission. And I'm sure speculation, I think somebody probably perused this before it went up.
As a former Fleet Street tabloid journalist, I could not believe my eyes when Jeremy Clarkson wrote doubly of his desire to see Meghan Markle paraded naked through the streets of every town in Britain while the crowds chanted shame and threw lumps of excrement at her. But in terms of base misogyny, I found it even more remarkable that he talked about hating her even more than he hated Nicola Sturgeon, whose only offence seems to me, from Jeremy Clarkson's point of view, the fact that she's a woman. Or possibly the fact that he's Scottish and independent and strong-minded. And, of course, Rose West, a serial killer. The story's still bubbling away a month later, and he's apparently facing the end of employment with an organisation like Amazon. He's obviously decided, completely coincidentally, that he needs to return to the fray and offer up a more fulsome apology, which reads as follows. Usually I read what I've written to someone else before filing, but I was home alone on that fateful day and in a hurry. So when I'd finished, I just pressed send, and then when the column appeared the next day, the landmine exploded. It was a slow rumble to start with, and I ignored it. But remember, this is an absolutely deep and sincere apology. But then the rumble got louder, so I picked up a copy of The Sun to see what all the fuss was about. This is weird. We've all been there, I guess, in that precise moment when we suddenly realise we've completely messed up. You're sweaty and cold at the same time, and your head pounds, and you feel sick. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Oh, got something in common. Had I really said that? It was horrible. I knew what had happened straight away. I'd been thinking of a scene in Game of Thrones, but I'd forgotten to mention this, so it looked like I was actually calling for revolting violence to rain down on Meghan's head. I was very angry with myself, because in all those controversial days on Top Gear, when I was accused of all sorts of things, it was very rarely sexism. Yeah, that's right, because you compared her to two men, didn't you, when you talked about hating her on a cellular level? You said, I hate her more than Fred West and Rishi. Oh, no, you didn't, mate. You chose women. But you're definitely not a misogynist. We never did women can't park gags, for instance. Is it too late to get them canonised? They never did women can't park gags on Top Gear. Is it too late to put him up for sainthood, do you think? Is it? Or suggested that powerful cars were only for men. Yeah, there's a big shock here. Television presenters trying not to alienate potentially half of their audience. I'll give the man a medal. And I was thrilled when Jodie Kidd and Ellen MacArthur set fastest ever laps in our reasonably priced car. Pardon? What? You compared her to a serial killer and said you preferred the serial killer, and you think the fact that Jodie Kidd drove a car quickly round a track on your old television programme somehow exonerates you from the allegation of misogyny? Mate, I think you should have read this to somebody before you sent it. Never mind the actual article. But he's not finished. He says, I'm just not sexist. Which is, of course, what all sexists say. And I abhor violence against women. And yet I seemed to be advocating just that. No, pal, you were not advocating just that. You weren't seeming to advocate just that. You were advocating just that. And for a man who abhors violence against women, how could you possibly hate someone who has committed no violence against women more than someone who killed several women after torturing them with her husband? Nothing says I abhor violence against women than saying, here's a blameless princess who I've got a problem with for reasons I can't really explain, but I had dinner with her mother-in-law last week. And I hate her more than an actual serial killer. But I abhor violence against women. Oh, and Ellen MacArthur once drove a car really quickly around a track on a television programme I used to present. So how could I possibly be a misogynist? It's pathetic.
You know, I think that when they were married, it was a beautiful day. Right. And people were celebrating how you saw this woman of color now in the royal family, gospel songs sung at the ceremony, the Queen sitting there. And then the reaction was so much acrimony and just looking to treat her differently. And people, whether you're in the UK or around the world, that was always treated differently, understood what Meghan was going through. It was somebody black working in the C-suites for the first time, and they treat you differently. Or someone walking down the street. And I think she became a symbol not of her own making. When you see the kind of mean-spirited article this guy wrote for no reason, drag her through the streets and all, yeah, fine, you can apologize, and many of us have said things not at that level that we could apologize for. But what makes you feel that you can say that in the first place? Right. And I think that in many ways, they exposed what was already there. And then people tried to blame Meghan for they are being exposed.